What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. I've been doing a couple of these. A lot of you guys in the comments seem to enjoy these when I give my input and get to listen to these. And as I said in my previous video, I think it's a lot more valuable when you get to listen, to these quotes in context. And I'll be the first to say I made a video, I think 2 days ago, regarding John Mara and some of his comments with Odell Beckham. I'm not going to play that video as well on top of this one because it's kind of a lot of the same talking points, and I'd rather hear it from Joe Schoen, being that he's the general manager of the football team. But I'll be the first to say, when I got a chance to watch the video and watch it in context, I was wrong. I was too harsh on John Mara. And listen, I'm defensive. I love this football team. And I did overreact. I made a tweet about it, and I was wrong. And in my video, I was a little too harsh on John Mara. The way that it came across via the tweet from Pat Leonard, it was presented much differently, at least in my opinion, than the way in which John Mara said it in the press conference. So that's why I think it's always better to get a chance to look at these videos and then analyze it that way. I've watched part of this. I haven't watched it in its entirety. I know this is from like a day or two ago. The Giants released this on their channel yesterday, but I figured I'd jump into some of the things that Joe Schoen said, give some of my opinions on, some of his talking points and, talking about this team going forward, being that we're coming up on the draft. Maybe he's hinting one way or the other. I think it's pretty clear. Since Shane has been here, he's been pretty straightforward. And I think we've started to pick up on that more and more as Giants fans along the way. But I figured I'd jump right into it. It's a 16-minute video, so why waste any more time? Let's jump into what Joe Schoen had to say at the owners' meetings just yesterday.
Waller, like, how do you get on your radar? Just kind of how that came together.
Yeah, I've known Dave Ziegler for a long time, so we had been in contact, Senior Bowl. And at the Combine, we just had some general conversations. Hey, anybody on your team that may be available, you kind of have those general conversations with, all the GMs at the Combine. That's part of it. And Waller was a name that came up that we were interested in. And we continued those talks when we got back. And after doing a little bit of research and coming to an agreement on the value, we went ahead and pulled the trigger.
What's your concern is his health and his availability?
Yeah, we did a lot of research on that as well. And, our training staff was the Ed Block training staff of the year this past year. Our soft tissue injuries are down over 200%. If you take out, a couple players that had multiple soft tissue.
That's crazy if that is accurate. Now, it's probably not a huge accomplishment that the soft tissue injuries are down 200% because the Giants have just been decimated with injuries. And we still had a ton of injuries last year. But if that's true, that's crazy, and that's an encouraging sign, right? That the medical staff is doing a much better job, perhaps, than they've done in the past. And hopefully with the new turf, made a video on that today, that should only improve, from an injury standpoint for the New York Giants going forward, which has been a big thorn in the side for this football team for a while. Kind of went into a little bit of detail there about how things developed with the Darren Waller trade market, and he talked about how he started talking to the Raiders general manager at the Combine. So you have to think, and I'm sure he talks about it throughout this video, that they're continuing discussions throughout the owners' meetings in Arizona. So who knows? Maybe a trade develops on draft day. You never know, right? And Joe Schoen just seems like the type of guy that is going to explore all avenues, as he's done. I thought going into the offseason, people had asked me that we would make a trade. I really did. I thought it'd be for a wide receiver. I didn't see Darren Waller. He kind of came out of nowhere. Loved the move for what we gave up for him, a guy with immense upside. But I thought we would trade for a weapon for the simple reason it was not a very rich free agency class at the wide receiver / tight end position. So I wasn't surprised they made a trade. I was a little bit surprised it was Waller. I think we were all expecting a wide receiver as a possibility, maybe a DeAndre Hopkins or one of the members of the Bucs, perhaps, being that they kind of feel like they may be in rebuild mode. So I wasn't surprised they made a trade. I was a little bit surprised it was Waller, pleasantly surprised. But let's get on with it.
Tissues, we were in really good shape. So, the soft tissue stuff, I have a lot of confidence in the training staff, our strength staff, the sports science. Dave spends a lot of time with those groups of people, along with myself, mapping out the practice schedule, training camp, how we're going to do things from the start of the season to the end of the season. And we felt comfortable with the information we had and, staff that we have in place to get him on the field and keep him healthy.
You put a premium on the guys, like injury histories and risk in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why have you, I don't know if you've changed that, but it seems like you've added a lot of guys with some histories. How have you approached that?
Yeah, I think when I got the job, Daniel, he missed a lot of games the year before. Saquon missed a lot of games the year before. Richie James missed the entire season the year before. Leonard Williams hadn't missed a game his entire career. And you miss it. You know what I mean? Like, you got to balance it. Like, it's football, there's going to be injuries. You evaluate the injuries on an individual basis. Were they preventable? How did they occur? You look at the film on some of the injuries. Is it something we could have done better? So again, we're always going to continue to find a competitive advantage wherever we can. And again, I have a lot of confidence in our strength staff, our medical staff, and the research that we've done on some of these players, that the injuries are something that we can treat, and the players will be available.
And I get why he asked the question, whoever the reporter was that asked that question, because, the Giants, at least at the beginning of free agency, it seemed like they were going for dependable guys, as Dable and Schoen like to say, smart, tough, dependable guys that have not had an injury history. Okereke, he's only missed 2 games his entire career. Nacho has played 3 straight seasons without an injury. And then they went out and they signed Campbell, who's had tons of injury history, and of course Waller, who's been hurt each of the last 2 years. But the difference being, they're only 1-year commitments at the end of the day. Waller, it ended up being more likely 2-year commitment, but Campbell's only a 1-year contract. So I don't really think that is necessarily him, steering away from looking for guys that they feel comfortable with in terms of their injury history. They're short commitments. They're guys that they could get out of the contract after a year if they wanted to. God, I'm not, knock on wood, this doesn't happen, but if Waller does get hurt, it would be a contract if the Giants really needed to that they could get out of.
Break down, we want more weapons. We want more things around Daniel, right? In the passing game, let's say. So, do you say, okay, it's a tight end, it's a receiver, or do you say it's a weapon? So like, does Waller balance out maybe not a receiver, you can get it number 1 or something like that?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, he's a offensive weapon. Again, who are those weapons that are available? Again, you have a free agency cycle, you have players that are available for trade, and you have a draft. Okay, so where can we find a player that has a dynamic skill set that can help us? And Waller was one of those players that we found out was available. Did our research on him, and we're able to come, the value met what we were willing to pay. And, again, that was, adding him, to me, he's a blue player, a Pro Bowl type player. And, I think that was, he'll be an asset for our offense.
Blue player?
That's our grading scale. If they're a blue, they're a Pro Bowl player. Blue. So, again, adding a weapon that, a guy that's a Pro Bowl type, player.
What's your concern level about the offensive line right now? You've obviously, your center's gone, your backup center's going to play guard.
Yeah.
So what's your concern level there?
Yeah, again, we knew John was on a 1-year contract. Last year at this time, we didn't know if Nick Gates was ever going to be able to play football again. Heck, we didn't know that till, midway through the season. So we had contingency plans in place. We claimed Jack Anderson. He was with us in Buffalo. He's been working at center. Ben Bredesen's a guy that we feel very comfortable with playing center. And then Shane Lemieux was playing it as well, last season before the injury. So we've got some guys in there that'll battle it out. We could, again, we still have the draft. We still have there's some centers that are on the street that we could consider. So we don't play until September. We're at camp in August, so we still have time. Guys may be cut post-draft. There could be.
All right. So that leads me to believe, based off what he said, and we'll see on draft day. You can only read so much into these comments, but Shane is a pretty straightforward guy. It doesn't seem like there's a Tyler Linderbaum type prospect in this year's draft class at the center position who was pretty much a consensus first-round pick. I'd be completely on board with taking a center early in this year's draft, preferably in the second round. But it sounds like there, at least from what Shane's saying, with some of the options that he has on this team, he's at least fairly comfortable, maybe in the short term, not necessarily the long term, with some of the options that they have at the center spot. And we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. But I think it's starting to look more and more like going into this draft that it's at least an increasing possibility that the Giants may be starting a guy like Bredesen at center, a guy like Lemieux at center to start the year. I would label Bredesen the favorite. That doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to draft the center. I think they definitely could and probably will. But it may be with the mindset of this is a developmental player. It might be a center they draft in round 3 or round 4 that could be a guy that could sit and learn for a year or at least half a season behind a guy like Bredesen as they, start to insert him into the starting lineup, which is kind of what I felt like was the plan last year with Azudu, who, of course, suffered a couple of injuries. But they were kind of, cautious in terms of throwing him right out there as a rookie. And it sounds like that may be the approach they go in to the 2023 season with the guys that they currently have on their roster. They may go with a veteran to start at that center spot, at least to start the year, which leads you to believe, if that is accurate, and I'm reading between the tea leaves accurately, I might be completely wrong, that expect them to probably go corner wide receiver relatively early in this year's draft, but we'll see.
be cap casualties. So we'll be patient. We'll continue to look, but we have confidence in Ben Bredesen, Jack Anderson, and Schoen, that they can snap the ball and play center for us.
Where does Saquon's negotiation stand?
I just talked to his agent a couple days ago, so I've been in constant contact with her. Right now he's on the franchise tag, and again, until we come to some sort of agreement down the road, then that's what it is right now. It's going to be the tag.
Based on the running back market situation, does your initial offer to him still stand, or have you removed that?
Yeah, no, there's no outstanding offer right now. So once we put the franchise tag on him, we step back. We knew that throughout the negotiation there was going to be a time where if we can't come to agreement, we're going to go to the franchise tag, and that's what we did.
And now you're resetting negotiations essentially.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, when you're building a team, and I'll say this to everybody, there's 53 players. You can't look at everybody in a silo. So as you're going through negotiations, if you can't come to an agreement on what the value of the player is, then you have to shift to plan B. And we knew we had the franchise tag as a tool, and we'll utilize that and see if anything happens down the road.
How much does the running back market has been soft affect how you value him? Because maybe you value him at one
It doesn't.
point. No.
It doesn't. I still think Saquon knows how I think about him, so it doesn't.
As I say, it's a big number. So would you be comfortable if he just says, "Oh, I'm going to play it through and play on this number"? Are you comfortable with him sticking around on that number for this year?
On the franchise tag?
Yeah, if it comes to that.
Yep.
Okay.
And what about a player, he obviously doesn't want the tag, running back having to stay healthy for another tag, the player's mental state going through a year on a tag, you can't do anything about it if that's.
Yeah, you have to ask him that.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
John said earlier that you guys haven't closed the door on.
That's a pretty strong stance by Joe Schoen. If you remember Joe Schoen like a month ago, before it came out that we were going to officially tag Saquon Barkley, came out and said how much he loves Saquon, how much he wants him to be a part of this team. And he's not saying he doesn't love him. He did say there he knows how I feel about him as a football player, but he is stern in answering those questions. This is going to get messy. This may not be a happy ending in terms of the contract negotiations between Saquon Barkley and the New York Giants. Of course, we all heard the reports, mid-season that they brought Saquon in. They talked about a contract in that $12.5 to $13 million range. In terms of how much was guaranteed, we don't know. But that was probably about fair market value when you really look at it and think about it. Derrick Henry in 2020, when the salary cap was $198 million, signed a contract for $12.5 million a year. The market has gone up. Now, it didn't go up as dramatically as it would have from 2020 to 2023 due to the pandemic. We all know that it obviously dropped in 2021, but it is now at 225, which is about a 12.5% increase from 2020 to 2023. But the reason I bring up Derrick Henry is because it was a very similar age. Henry was 26, much like Saquon Barkley. It wasn't like McCaffrey when he was 23, which is why Henry only got 12.5 in comparison to the $16 million a year that a guy like Christian McCaffrey got, who was much younger at the time. Not to mention he's a dual fast running back. But Barkley with a more significant injury history, so on and so forth. You would think Henry, if all things were equal, same age, same market, would probably have a slightly higher value than a guy like Saquon Barkley. So being that the market's gone up by about 12.5% from 2020 to 2023, you would say to yourself, okay, well, then Barkley's worth about $14 million if he was viewed equally to a guy like Henry. But from a production standpoint and an injury standpoint, I think it's fair to say that Saquon's market his fair market at least, is probably in that $12.5 to $13 million range based off his age and injury history and everything else. So I think what the Giants offered him, if that is accurate, again, I don't know the guaranteed money, was fair. And, it sucks because I love Saquon. But I think Saquon's agent made the wrong decision. I don't think that she anticipated all the other running backs getting franchise tagged and it being a very thin, free agency class after that. And it kind of cratered the market. All the teams spent their money, and it's a rich running back draft class, which kind of leaves Saquon Barkley stuck between a rock and a hard place. Where this will go, I don't know. I hope it works out. I hope that they could come to a fair agreement. But I do think it's going to get messy, and it does not look like that Joe Schoen is going to budge. He's drawn his line in the sand, as he said before, and Mara kind of echoed these sentiments.
Or Odell, the way Caps things are right now, is it even possible to sign him at the level he wants? I mean, would that be an issue right now?
Yeah, we'll continue, not just Odell, but players across all positions that are available. We'll continue to look at, and again, you can get creative with the cap if you need to in certain situations. Again, we're trying to get out of that business for now. At some point, it's probably going to happen, but yeah, again, if there's a player out there that we think that will help us, we'll always look into those if it makes sense.
Joe, have you spoken to Saquon yet about maybe what your expectations are? April 16th, I think, is when you guys come in. Is he going to?
No, I haven't talked to him about that. I've talked to him. I probably talked to him. It's probably a week and a half ago. And again, I've been in constant contact with his representatives. So
You joked every time you brought up Leonard about the pay cut thing that came up. Like, where do things stand? Have you made any action there to try to get that number lowered?
Nope.
Do you think you'll need to eventually?
All right, so there he's talking about Leonard Williams, and obviously we're hoping that they're able to get that number down. He's $32 million against the cap this year, and Leonard Williams came out and kind of jokingly said at the end of the year that he would take a pay cut to get to play with Dexter Lawrence. Well, according to Shane here, at least, they haven't talked about it. We'll see, but it doesn't look like Leonard Williams and the New York Giants are even discussing potentially extending him, at least as of now. Maybe Leonard Williams comes to him and talks about an extension, but as of now, nothing in the works.
everything's on the table, but no, we haven't had conversations with him about that.
And John Mara was just saying here, he, fully expects Leonard to be on the team this year. So obviously when you go to a guy with a pay cut, there's always a threat like, okay, if you don't take this, we're going to cut you. So do you think that, basically saying that he's going to be on the team could, he's going to say, well, you already said I'm going to be on the team. Is there, you know what I mean? Does that undercut that at all? Or it's not, I guess it's not legal.
But what's the other side of that? What you just said, you got to go to him and say, we're going to cut you. So again, it's his cap number's high. His cash is, it's probably, if he doesn't miss any games, I don't think it's out of whack. And again, we'll try to figure it out. But like to go to one of your better players and say, you take a pay cut and you don't have any leverage, then they're probably not going to, So we like Leonard. We haven't had any conversations with it. I know he made that comment. We kind of joke about it, but we haven't approached him on anything like that.
And there's other ways to do it, right? You could move the money around in other ways than just having to take a pay cut, clearly. Right?
We could, yeah. Yep.
To go with, no, just going to.
Leonard Williams playing next year. I think that's fairly obvious. So for anybody that's worried about that, don't worry about it. And the way that Shane answered that second question when they said you could move money around without the extension, if you're Shane, what's the incentive? Unless I guess you want to sign a guy like Barkley, but then you're just further damaging next year's cap. I think I don't have Leonard Williams' contract in front of me. I think he's already going against next year's cap. Not a lot. I think it's like $4 or $5 million in terms of void money that the Giants had to push back to be able to get under last year's salary cap. So I don't think Shane's going to want to damage next year's cap any more than he already has with the Leonard Williams contract unless they extend him. They don't extend him. I don't expect them to touch that contract. I think he plays out the year on the contract if they don't extend him. And the Giants probably let him go at year's end, being that they're going to invest a lot of money in Dexter Lawrence. But I don't expect this to be I expect Leo to play at least one more year as a New York Giant.
Follow up on Dex if you guys have had any more conversations with that.
Yeah, we've had good conversations with the representatives. Probably Friday was probably the last time we were in contact with them. So again, we're we're in negotiations, and we'll see if we can get something done.
You guys keep going to dinner with wide receivers, so is that an indication that you
We
need
go to dinner with a lot of players. It's not just wide receivers; it's what everybody focuses on.
do you feel like you still need to upgrade that position? I mean, I know Darren's kind of a wide receiver, but
Yeah, and that's the good thing about Dave's is whatever weapons we have, like he does a great job of, again, we're doing some self-scout from last season, but in terms of our playbook and what we're going to do this upcoming season, we're going to wait until we have all the weapons in the building. Again, we know we have Waller now. We know we have Paris, like Slayton's back. You got Saquon. You look at the guys that have Wandell is going to be coming back. Hopefully Shep gets healthy. So Hodgins, we got depth and we got competition across the board. So once we figure out who's going to be here, then we'll start mapping out the offense.
Joe, what you said the soft RB market financially is not a factor with Saquon. Why not though? Because doesn't that dictate contract?
It's not for us.
Just because you think he's unique, or
It's just where we are with him on the franchise tag. We're fine with that. Where does that rank him in the running backs in the league?
12, 10?
At 10 million? No, he's higher than that.
Higher than that?
Yeah, it's higher than that.
You're not comfortable going over that, it sounds like then. Or
That's just where we are right now.
Yeah.
As we mapped out the offseason program, that was an option we had. And again, we had to look, it's just not one player. We have multiple players and we're trying to build a team, whether it's offensively, defensively, special teams. And, it came to the point where, the franchise tag was what we had to use.
chemistry was such an important thing for you guys last year. When you get something like that and every year is different, you come back. Do things like that worry you that, hey, if he's not a happy camper, it could affect the chemistry of the team?
Yeah, I'm not going to speak for how he's going to feel, but yeah, I mean, we got Matt Breida back. He's a leader on offense. He's a leader on special teams. Daniel was a captain. The receiver room is, comprised of a bunch of good guys. Defensive line, we got guys back. Hottie's going to be back. Okariki's, a good leader. Nacho's a leader. We just signed Bobby McCain. He's a leader. So I think we've got a good group of leaders, on the team. Again, it stunk losing Julian and Gates and Feliciano. Those guys were some really good leaders that were important to the team last year. But every year is new. You start new. It's going to be a totally different team, a totally different chemistry. But I think we got good pieces in place in terms of the people and the leadership skills.
The flip side of offense.
Again, kind of discounting Saquon there. You could tell that there's probably a little bit of friction. Not that they don't like each other, but you could tell Saquon's probably not very happy, and Joe Schoen knows it. And I don't blame Saquon. Things didn't work out in his favor, but I also can't blame the New York Giants for playing it out on the tag. I just can't. I think most teams in their situation would have done the same thing. So I can't kill them for that, but it does not seem like they asked about, do you worry about losing Saquon's leadership if he's upset and, the locker room? And he went on to name several players that he feels are great locker room influences outside of Saquon Barkley. But let's continue.
Offensive additions. Where do you feel about cornerback and especially linebacker too with adding Bobby?
Yeah, I mean, we have depth at corner. Obviously, Dory's coming back. We like some of our young guys. And again, the draft class, you expect some of those guys, one, coming back healthy, and then two, make a jump, in year two, whether it's offensively or defensively. So, again, those guys coming back off injury, I think will be a big help for us.
Do you see Nick and Cordell fighting for the way things stand right now, and obviously the draft, but fighting for that other?
Yeah, it's going to be open competition. I think we showed that last year, regardless of where you're drafted or how much money you're making. We're going to play the best players. And, I think that was apparent, and those guys will battle it out, and, the best man will play.
Big picture question. Last year at this time, you were saying it was like compete today, build for tomorrow. Like, where are you at in that process? Like, how much of things expedited? Do you see a window here? The NFC, maybe there's a path for you guys to make a leap?
Yeah, we just want to keep making progress each year, and I think off season having a little bit more flexibility financially to go out and get some players helped us. We still got the draft capital, so again, when you're paying players, whether it's top of the market, top 5, top 10, eventually, you have to draft well because you got to have those players that are cost controlled. So we'll still focus on those guys with, again, future contracts coming up. That'll probably be pretty hefty too. So, it's going to be important that we draft and those young players contribute.
How much better do you think your run defense is with the linebacker and the defensive tackle?
Yeah, it's definitely better. I mean, I don't know how much, but like last year, the D-line depth, was something. And the linebacker depth, it was hard to upgrade that throughout the season. And, I felt like we've done that so far.
If you list from last year, as you went game to game to game, your concerns, was run defense at or top, high?
Yeah, I think we're 27th in the league.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was. And then, if you get to third down, then Wink can do a lot of the stuff that he does. So
You had Ashawn Robinson. Is that still on the table?
Yeah, we're still in negotiation with his guy. I wouldn't say negotiation. We're in talks with him. And, we'll continue to be. We've had good conversations with his representatives.
All right, so there you have it. We'll see where that goes. But Ashawn Robinson, I would love if the New York Giants were able to bring him in, right? Talking about the weakness of that run defense. I think I let that play for a few seconds after the fact. But talk about the weakness of that run defense. Bringing in a guy like that would certainly help. So, according to Shane, still in talks. We'll see how that plays out.
His representatives.
A lot of GMs on Twitter have you trading for wide receivers. Is that something? Is that something you think is possible?
Again, we're going to be no different than the Waller thing. This is a good time. Being around all the other GMs to have conversations with them. Again, anybody in their roster that you're maybe shopping or may get rid of or whatever. You have those conversations now. And hey, if you are going to move player X, keep me in the loop or you circle back with them. So again, we're always going to be looking to get better, whether it's whatever avenue it is, and trade being one of those, we'll be open to it.
How open are you on the trade idea, maybe using some of that draft capital to move up in the draft at all?
Yeah, we could go either way. Again, if it makes sense, we'll go through all these conversations, obviously, and strategizing in April. But we can move up, we can move back. Just depending how it is. I always like to go into the draft being able to go play a game. We may not be as good as we were a year ago, or we may be close, but you can go in and then you don't have to draft for need. You can take the best player available if you have to. You don't back yourself into a corner. So I think that's important.
How are you just kind of how are you feeling going into this draft this year? You know, you have your quarterback set, just compared to last year, and feeling so overwhelmed, perhaps.
Yeah, good. I mean, much better. I have a much better feel for, specifically defensively, what Wink wants. I had never worked with Wink before, where, Dave's and I and some of the offensive guys have worked together. So that process was a little bit smoother in terms of what they were looking for. So in terms of, what exactly Wink wants in his defense and how he's going to utilize, the personnel, I feel much better going into it.
When you came here this year, did you ever at any point think back to last year in Florida and, you were very new? You didn't have a lot of money in free agency. You were a first-time GM, and think back the two, and it's kind of 1 year later, where you are and how much more better you feel probably about yourself and the team.
Yeah, it's a different set of problems. Last year it was easy to tell everybody you don't have any money, and then the year you have money, everybody says, well, the agents tell you, well, you got money, why don't you pay this guy more? So it was a different free agency cycle for sure. You start off from a position of strength in terms of financially. But yeah, I'm excited for year two. I'm excited for Dave's and his staff. I'm excited that we have continuity amongst the staff. Both coordinators coming back who, have a chance of being, head coaches. They had interviews and were finalists for jobs. So the ability to get those guys back, and then, core nucleus of the team coming back, they know the offense, they know the defense, they know the culture, they know how we're going to do things. They know what the calendar looks like. Dave's going to take care of them at practice. So yeah, I'm just excited. But every year is new, and we have a lot of work to do, and we got to build that chemistry for the 2023 team, because 2022 doesn't matter anymore.
You knew Brian better than anybody. You helped bring him here, obviously. He's the coach of the year now. Did you learn a lot from him? And did you learn a lot in him this year that, like, you look back and okay, I knew he was going to be a good coach, but he's even done this. You know what I'm saying? This is the 1 year you worked together with him as a head coach.
Yeah, I think just his leadership across, I had seen it before, his leadership across, all three phases. There was, he was offensive coordinator, dealing with the defensive guys, even when he wasn't a coach on that side of the ball or special teams. And, he did that throughout the building, not just the team, but throughout the building this year. And, I was very impressed with his leadership, through good times and bad. And we had some adversity there mid-season, after the bye and stuff. And, I thought he did a really good job navigating those waters. And, eventually we came out on the other side and went on to win a playoff game. So, yeah, I think he did a great job.
Joe, when let's talk to you. You said, it was after Daniel's contract, and you said, obviously now you want to put some weapons around him and give him support. Do you feel like now, sitting here, that you guys have successfully done that with what you did in free agency and the Waller trade? Have you put the right weapons around him?
I think we're better than we were. And again, it goes back to, it's not fantasy football. So when you say, go get a number one receiver, like, you're only afforded what's on the market, what's available. So, like, all these things sound great, but with the receiver group that was out there, Paris Campbell was a guy our coaches really liked. We liked Slayton, getting him back, was important, upgrading the D-line, linebacker. So I know receiver is kind of the one that everybody holds on to. But yeah, I think Daniel has a better group. He knew Crowder very well. He had thrown with him before, his days at Duke. So yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm excited to see how these guys gel and, what Daniel can do.
So there you go. I just want to get a quick video up on that, recapping that, give you guys my opinion regarding that, and just kind of go over it in case you guys haven't got an opportunity to watch it. Obviously, it's on the New York Giants YouTube page. So going over there, check them out. They've really started to grow their channel. They got great content over there. And this is one of several interviews. They had an interview with Dable that was a little bit shorter in length. They had an interview with obviously Mara. Now, I watched all three of them, but yeah, a lot of really interesting quotes coming out there from Schoen talking about the direction of this football team. I think it's encouraging stuff. And every time I listen to the guy speak, he gets me more and more excited as a Giants fan that I do think that we have a guy with a good head on his shoulders with a good plan. He was talking about plan A, B, C, D, his ability to adjust based on, what's presented to him. He hasn't ruled out the possibility of a trade, whether it be for an established pro, trading up, moving up in the draft, moving back in the draft. And that's what you want. You want a guy that's open to all possibilities. And it does not seem like Joe Schoen is stuck in his ways. So a lot coming out from those questions, obviously a lot more on the Saquon Barkley front. And I think it's painting a murkier and murkier picture, but I can't really fault Joe Schoen for it. It's his job as a general manager to be cold-blooded and do what he feels is in the best interest of the football team, and he's not going to cave into those demands. But, yeah, a lot of good stuff coming out from the meetings, and can't wait to see what this team does in about a month in the draft. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.